So now we move into the module of contracts. Let's have a look at the different types. There's mainly 3 of them. The first one is lump sum or fixed price contracts. These are the most common type of contract for new builds, but they can be very hard to do them with renovations if you're not really 100% organised and know exactly what you want to do. The next type is project management or fixed fee type contracts. They're not as common, but they're probably the fairest contracts of all. They do require a reasonable amount of effort from the client during the build process though. And the last type is cost plus contracts. These are the most common for renovations, but they can be fraught with problems. So first of all, we're going to look at lump sum or fixed price contracts. These contracts are most commonly used for new builds because there's the least amount of unknowns in them. Fixed price contracts can work well with renovations, but to get the most out of them, you need to be as well prepared as you can possibly be. Now you've got to make sure that you understand, lump sum and fixed price contracts are not transparent contracts. The only figures that you're going to see when it comes time for the contract are PC and PS items. That's prime cost and provisional sums. A prime cost is something like your appliances. Provisional sums are earthworks. So you won't know how much the builder's making and how much all the other people on the job site are charging to do the work. We need to make sure that we've got as few unknowns as possible. There is the problem that when you get into unknown areas of the build, they can become quite heavily loaded with contingency to allow for this factor. This can unnecessarily add quite a large amount to the contract price. Now you might find that the builder you're looking at going into contract with is only wanting to give you a provisional sum allowance for the carpentry. He's not happy to give you a fixed price. You need to be careful of this because this can turn into a can of worms. If you get an allowance put in there, make sure that you have got the option that you can go and get other quotes from other carpenters who can possibly do the job as well. It is imperative that prior to signing the contract, you agree to how you are going to be charged for any of the provisional sums. You've got to make sure that these figures are realistic. You don't want to have a $100 allowance in there for earthworks when you know yourself that it's going to be at least a good few $1,000s. The only one who's going to be disappointed in the end is you, because you're going to have the bill and you're going to have started to lose some faith in the builder. So make sure you're happy with all these allowances. Now when it comes down to provisional sums, it is fair and reasonable to ask that you receive the invoice direct. You're the one who's paying for it. You want to make sure that you're not going to be having to pay any additional margin on top. So pay the figure direct to whoever has done the work. Don't be surprised if the builder tries to charge a margin on the additional expenses associated with the PC and PS allowances if it hasn't been his doing that they have gone over. They'll more than likely require additional supervision, so it is fair and reasonable. Fixed price contracts tend to be the hardest to try and compare apples with apples. This is because they're not transparent enough. They're also very hard to tell if someone's made a mistake in the quoting process. Remember that if a mistake has been made and no one picks it up, or conversely, you drive a very hard deal for the price, inevitably, what tends to happen is that the contractor then starts to look for every and any available option to try and recuperate their losses. Whether this is intentional or not, this is human nature. Nobody wants to be working for nothing. Or worse still, nobody wants to make a loss. If you're working with a fixed price or a lump sum contract and you've got a really low price, you just want to be careful. With that lack of transparency, you can quite often find that if they've made a mistake or you've driven a really hard deal, that they'll make sure that they will recuperate the money one way or another and you won't ever know. Now remember, you need to be comparing apples with apples. You're probably going to find that you're going to need to provide most of the PC and quite a few of the PS items to the builders. And then the ones that you don't actually supply, make sure that everyone is putting on the same allowances. This way, it makes it easier for you when you're trying to compare the quotes. Variations under lump sum contracts can be quite expensive. Because there's no transparency, you're not going to know where your money is going. So you just got to be very careful of that. You'll usually find that under a fixed price contract, there's generally a documentation or administration fee that's attached to the variation. I've seen these before at $800, and I've actually heard of it getting up to $1,200. So what you want to try and do is get a few variations done at the one time if possible, and that way you're going to minimise the amount of documentation fees that you've got to pay. Now if you can, before you sign the contract, try and negotiate the variation fees. Sometimes this will work, sometimes it won't, but it's worthwhile giving it a try because it's money in your pocket. Now project management or fixed fee contracts are the least common amongst the residential industry. However, in the commercial industry, they're very widely used. The reason for this is that they are the fairest option overall for all the parties. How they work is by having a completely transparent quoting and contract process. The client sees all the individual prices from the contractors along with the management fee of the builder. Project management contracts are the best type of contract to use if you've already selected the builder. Maybe this is because he's a friend, family, personal recommendation, or you have previously used him. But by using this method, you can stick with the same builder and have him tender all the trades and supplies essentially on your behalf. You can stipulate that you want a minimum of 3 quotes on every aspect of the project, and you can request that you view all the quotes and be involved in the selection process. So comparing apples with this type of contract is easy. It enables you to pick up the mistakes as well in other people's quotes. Because it's completely transparent, you'll be able to be involved the whole way through the process, and you can make sure that the builder has managed to convey your overall wish and desire for the project. Usually you can find that the project managers are quite happy for you to go and supply your contacts for quoting purposes. Remember to respect their opinion of the contractor, as he's going to be the one having to drive the project and make sure that the desired outcome has been met. But if you have got a cousin, or maybe it's a brother, who's an electrician and he can save you good money, you're best talking to the builder about it, because quite often they're more than happy to substitute your person for their guy. Variations under a project management contract are usually cheaper, as more often than not there is no administration or documentation fee there, as you are paying all the bills directly to the subcontractors. There is less chance of you paying a margin on the individual parts of that variation. Project management contracts will generally require you, the client, to pay all the bills direct. You should only be doing this if the manager has processed all the bills and they are in accordance with the quotes that were signed at the contract stage. In some cases, project managers are also happy to make all the payments for you. Usually this would be after you've signed off on all the payments and have deposited the required amount of funds in their bank account. Project management contracts will usually require the client to have more involvement in the project and more than likely a weekly or fortnightly meeting on site. By doing this regularly, you'll minimise the chance for mistakes. The chances of mistakes getting too far down the track become expensive to rectify if noticed too late. But by keeping in regular contact, you'll find you will develop a relationship with all the guys on site. And this should also help you to get whatever you need or want a hell of a lot easier. The fees that the project manager may charge can vary quite a lot depending on the level of difficulty. Sometimes you may be able to save time and money by spending time on the job, mainly with the procurement of materials, such as PC items, and possibly also with site labouring and clean-up and taking away rubbish. So overall, we have found project management contracts to be the best value. They're the best for being able to save money, and what they do is they lock in the builder straight away so we know exactly how much he's going to cost. So the last type of contract to look at are cost-plus contracts. They're the most common form of contracts when it comes to renovations. Now, cost-plus contracts work exactly as the name suggests. It is a straight percentage on top of every single cost associated with the job. Now there are advantages with this, but they are few and far between, and they're not that easy for clients to achieve. These cost-plus contracts are extremely open-ended. You very rarely see any fixed prices in them. This may seem fine on the surface, but there is no incentive for the builder to try and save you any money. In fact, he's realistically encouraged to get the project more expensive so that he can make more money. Cost-plus contracts are no different to having someone working for you on wages, and the longer it takes, the better for them. Something to be aware of is that cost-plus contracts are actually not endorsed in some states. Now what this means is that the regulatory authority won't support you in any type of contract dispute. Usually with cost-plus contracts, the head contractor will also be doing an element of the work himself, and usually it's on an hourly rate. They don't normally do it on a set contract price, but you've really got to try and get that price locked in so you know exactly where you stand. Just be careful that everyone doesn't see you as the money tree if you've got them on hourly rate. The longer it goes on, the better it is for them. A massive advantage of cost-plus contracts is that they enable you to get going on a job a lot sooner than if you were going to use either of the other contracts. You don't need to do any homework on any of the fixtures or finishes before the contract signing. But if you are going to get finance, you need to make sure that your bank supports the type of contract that you want to use. So you usually find that these contracts are best suited to the person who has had some building experience before, and they know how to make sure that they are paying the right price and to keep on top of making the decisions. You can use cost-plus contracts, and they do work very well, but you really want to make sure that you're on top of it all the time. Cost-plus contracts can work for you. They can work very well, but you have to make sure that you have the final say on who gets the job, along with the right to ask for more quotes for the work. Cost-plus contracts work very well for a client, but you have to have your wits about yourself, and you need to be the driver when it comes to pricing. You need to push for fixed price quotes, and you need to understand what is included in each one. This way, you're always comparing apples with apples. Make sure that you have your spreadsheets up and running for comparing the trade contractors. A spreadsheet for comparing trades can be a lot simpler than the one required for comparing head contractors, but they are still vital, so you can see exactly what is going on in black and white. We've built an action sheet for you that helps compare the head contractors. This will give you an idea of what you need for comparing subcontractors.